Hi, Craig. Welcome back to the Free Speech Cage.
Good afternoon, Max. As always, nice to be here.
What are we going to talk about today?
Big surprise. We're going to talk about 3 days of the Condor and how life mimics art.
I take it you mean Venezuela.
Well, Venezuela, and I think we'll drift into U.S. military and political adventures elsewhere throughout the world and throughout history as well, because Venezuela is by no means the first or currently the only, nor will it be the last place where we've put American power in someone else's backyard.
Yeah, I think my perspective is that this isn't like past military adventures. The oil in Venezuela, by all accounts from people in the oil industry, is not worth anything at the moment. So many people are saying he's only doing this to get away. I don't want to steal your thunder about the convicted felon and whatever however you put it. It's just a way to digress away from the Epstein files.
Yes, I think that's a lot of it, but it is also the oil. Remember, Trump is a person who gets something in his mind, and the guy's got a superpower, right? He makes it happen. He engineers an almost coup at the Capitol. Doesn't even go to jail for it. People die. He doesn't go to jail for it. He comes back and becomes the next president. The guy is superhuman at stating a position, however wrong it might be, and making that the reality. So Trump has said it's our oil, essentially. Trump has said we're going to run Venezuela. Um, and that's the reality he's trying to make. And I think, as you said, it's also a huge distraction for the Epstein files, which have not been released, by the way, nor has the Justice Department explained anything about the redactions. The whole thing has been put on the side while other things go on. And it will come back. The Epstein files aren't going away.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what this week brings. I think they're just go. I mean, I, I don't know how Congress cannot act about what he just did. It's just mind blowing. And I think the biggest irony to me, and I'm sure to you too, is that here he is saying Maduro is some big drug trafficker, and if you go onto the Department of Justice's website, where it has all the list of the pardons, they're all basically
Including the
traffickers.
former president of Honduras, right?
Right? Yeah.
So clearly it wasn't about the drugs. Not only was it not about the drugs, but they couldn't get the story about the drugs. Probably is it cocaine, is it fentanyl? The fentanyl's coming from China. None of this stuff is going to America anyways, or at least not directly. It's going to some other place first. Uh, they just found a useful target, someplace where, by the way, we could mass American forces without bumping into China, without bumping into India, without bumping into Russia, right? When we went into Iraq, which many people, including myself, think was one of the most horrible decisions made in American presidential history, period. We had to get permission from Turkey. We had to get permission from all these different people to use their countries as staging areas or to fly over their countries or to go through territorial waters. Just here, we just did it. We didn't have to ask permission. And
Yeah.
so Venezuela was partially just in the wrong place at the wrong time. This whole, what they're calling it, the Donroe Doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine, extended, 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 which is China, Russia, you get your sphere. China gets Ukraine. Sorry, China gets Taiwan. Russia gets Ukraine. We get Venezuela and whatever else is in South and Latin America that we want. Um, so, yeah, that's where we kind of are. Uh, what we also know is that Trump, president and convicted felon Trump, is openly talking now, about Mexico and Greenland. This he views as a success. What we did is we went in. By the way, hand it to the people that carried out this raid. They carried it out well, unless you're of course one of the Venezuelans that got killed in it. But the Americans didn't get stuck, as one fears happens. The helicopter goes down, and all of a sudden you've got that. And we talked about this. You've got thousands of armed Venezuelans pounding some group of SEALs or Marines or whatever, and then you have to send more people in. Went in, got them, pulled out. Sounds great. What's next in Venezuela, Max?
Well, I mean, I don't even buy the existing narrative. I think if anybody actually thinks about it for a few minutes, they'll realize that it just doesn't make any sense. So Maduro knows, right? The U.S. has all the warships, blow up 100 boats, whatever. He knows that they're out there. He knows that the U.S. wants to depose him, right? So you would think he would have all the security apparatus, the Russian helpers, Chinese helpers, all these people would be surrounding him and protecting him. So even with Zelensky, I think when it comes out long into the war, he'll have had French special forces, U.S. special forces, protecting him early on. The Ukrainians also. So what I think happened in this case is they first sent in, probably on the ground, they just drove up. They had paid everybody off. They paid all the Venezuelans in a security team. They paid off all the Chinese that are involved, all the Russian involved. Like, I think $100 million went into this, which is easy because Trump just took it from the Treasury, right? He doesn't care. I mean, that's his lifelong thing. So he takes the money from whatever government account. And I think this has been planned for months, if not years. So he went in, he basically paid everybody off. He said, listen, I'm going to come grab this guy. You turn the other way. Don't do anything. And so, like, one jet did take off. But when it called ground control, where should I go? Nobody would talk to him because everybody had been paid to basically for 2 hours turn the other way, on the understanding that not only do they get all this money, but that once Maduro is out, they go back to business as a world. The U.S. isn't going to touch their business interests or whatever, which the U.S. can't anyway. So I think that's what happened. So they kidnapped him. As soon as they had to go ahead that they had kidnapped him, then the helicopters went in, blowing up all the stuff to make it look like that they had done this invasion and captured him.
Oh, so you think they could have just walked him out down the streets of Caracas and onto a boat and whisked him away?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's not a bad narrative.
No, they wouldn't perp walk him. I mean, obviously, there it would be all done under cover of night. So at night, they would go in, they would take him, just drive him down to wherever.
So you're saying the actual violence was theater?
Yes, all the violence was theater.
Maybe, maybe not, but I don't even know that that's that relevant because your point was, well, okay, you get Maduro, he's gone. Who's next? It's Rodriguez, right? The vice president, who's an avowed Marxist, an avowed leftist. What has changed in this Venezuela that President and convicted felon Donald Trump says he is going to run, the U.S. is going to run? You're right. The oil interests in America don't want the oil in Venezuela. They have no idea what the capacity for pumping or doing anything with that oil infrastructure is, much less what the future of that country is in terms of sectarian or non-sectarian, or God knows what the Venezuelans will find to fight about. But if we're not careful, they'll find something. So my fear is we went in, America did it, and I'm an American, so there's a responsibility here. We went in, however we got it, we got this guy, we come out. Now, if Venezuela keeps just being Venezuela, fine. If the opposition, which remember, won the elections, right? If the opposition leader just won the Peace Prize. So if the opposition sees this as the moment to seize power, and the Venezuelan government in actuality is unwilling to see that moment in the same light, you could have a bloodbath down there. And we've seen that happen, right? We saw that happen with the Kurds within living memory in Iraq. America has a horrible, horrible tradition of dipping their toes in the water, getting people all excited, and then saying, yeah, the water's too cold. We're going home.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any, and this is where it's different from 3 Days of the Condor, which again is fiction. I don't think that there's any, again, the Iraq War, I understood. I didn't agree with it, but I understood sort of the thinking behind it. But this is, I don't think, first of all, as you know, I don't like when you call Trump a convicted felon because it makes him sound actually smart, like he's smart enough to commit a crime. And maybe he was back in the day.
I think the guy's brilliant in his own special, twisted way. I think we underestimate him, us liberals, at our peril. But go on.
See, I don't think he's brilliant. I think he's literally a moron. And he's a moron, however, that knows how to get people interested, to take what somebody tells him in his ear and reach people who vote and people who are disenfranchised or whatever. He's like a perfect populist, but he's an absolute moron because, like, for instance, he's saying, oh, we're going to run Venezuela now. I mean, that is just so. I don't think there's any geopolitical analyst that wouldn't laugh at that. And it's the same thing when he said with Gaza, like, we're just going to build hotels. I mean, how literally stupid can you be, right? I mean, you've wasted the whole place. You've destroyed all the buildings. Hamas is still there. Israel has retreated because every time they turn out the lights or turn their heads, somebody pops out of a hole and shoots them.
So Israel has retreated out of Gaza?
Yes.
Completely.
It's
no.
Yes. Well, it's hard because they've basically razed most of it. So they've gone in and they basically razed all the buildings. So they haven't retreated in a sense that. So to me, a retreat would be, okay, you have all the buildings and you're pulling out, but they've actually pushed all the buildings forward. Like there's very few buildings that are standing correctly, and everything else is raised, and they're in that area that's basically a flat area. So that they're in that area where you just can't like walk across it or you'd be seen. So they haven't withdrawn in a sense, like they're still very deep in Gaza, but the old Gaza. But now that those buildings are gone, I would call it a retreat because they're outside the areas that still have some infrastructure. And so anyway, but getting back to the main point is that it's not in Venezuela. You're not going to take over nothing's been taken over. They've just taken one guy out. And the guy
and his wife.
Yeah, and his wife. But I mean, it just sounds so, I think even Trump was saying like he didn't get to the steel door, the safe house door or whatever. That's why I think that's why I think they definitely didn't attack first, because if they attacked first, he would have heard it. He would have just been sitting in his room like, what's that, right? Or somebody would have came and said, hey, are the fireworks today? What's going on? So I think that, it just doesn't make any sense. And anyway, I've lost track of where I was.
But you have a couple of points.
Right.
One of which is the violence was theater.
Right.
The other, and I think that's almost irrelevant except for the people that got killed.
Right.
The second point, which we both agree on, is okay. So you've got the number 2 person, now the number 1 person in Venezuela. What has changed other than that? And it's hard to argue anything has changed. And so Trump's gone out on this limb. We're going to run Venezuela. The oil is ours. But when nothing happens in a month, in 2 months, in 5 months, nothing has changed, that will be something Democrats can continue to harp on as issues of affordability and whatnot stay in the prominence of Americans' minds, when the elections come up. The worst case scenario in my mind is things get violent, like I said earlier, and the opposition thinks now is the time. They read more into what Trump is doing than Trump is doing. And they take this as an opportunity to get aggressive, and they get squashed. And like I was saying before the show, it's kind of like this big house of cards or glasses, and you on top of a sheet, and you pull the sheet out. Maybe the glasses stay up, maybe they don't. We're at that moment where the sheet just came out. I don't know what happens next. But you talked about Gaza. That is a similar story of it's very difficult to project power and then keep it projected. People get killed. You said you can't walk around these places. Some Israeli soldier can't walk around these places or settle or whatever without worrying about getting shot. And that is what has happened forever and ever and ever. We go in, we try to make someplace whatever it is we want to make it, and the way it works is we inhabit it like we did the North American continent. We kill everyone like we did in the Philippines, and there's some great books on In Our Own Image and so forth. Or we stay there for a long time, kill a lot of people, get a lot of our people killed, blow stuff up, and then leave, as happened in Afghanistan and Iraq and Vietnam and a whole host of other places. It's never, ever, ever benign. If we get in, get the president, get out, and that's the end of the story. This will have been something that ends very quickly, doesn't have much of an impact on anything, is probably the best we can hope for.
Yeah, I don't think, as I said, the point I was really trying to get after is that there's no like Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying, there's no master plan, there's no, there are no plans, and no smart people here. I think that's dead on. So they were,
But half of Plan 2025 is enacted. I mean, I disagree with it. I think having no plan and looking like you have no plan is part of the plan. I think, and I don't know that that's Trump's part of the plan, but I think they're being super successful in the stuff they want to do. They want to destroy the federal government.
right. But what I'm saying is that the government usually works in a way that each part sort of has its interests, right? So you might have the commerce part that would be talking to the military part, that might be talking to the the Treasury Secretary, whatever. They sort of work together. They each have different agendas, and they try and get their policies to sort of take care of everybody else. But that isn't like this. I mean, it isn't, again, with Iraq, the whole idea was, in my mind, is that Rumsfeld and Cheney had both decided that the Middle East needs to, bow and scrape when we say for them to bow and scrape, that they need to follow along, that Iraq can't just go into Kuwait. And so the first Bush pushed them out. And that's pretty much like keeping the international order of, just don't, nations can't take over other nations. But in the second war, it was more about like, people had this theory, right? Like the younger Bush was trying to get after him because he insulted his dad in a sense. So you had more of a going in there, like there are like special interests that were going in here, and that's what we're seeing today. Whoever wants to get Maduro out is a clique of people that we don't know who they are. They are not coordinating with other branches of the government. They're not calling the Treasury and saying, well, how much can we afford to do? They're not calling the Army and saying, hey, if we take him out, how much soldiers do we need to take care of this? Now, I'm sure they're being told, but they're just ignoring them. They don't care. Each one just ignores them. So they're waiting for their plan. They've had the plan for a long time. With the Epstein files, finally have Trump, and they go to Trump, hey, listen, we can get Maduro now. And of course, Trump's head is like, well, I don't want to talk about the Epstein files next week, so he's going to do it. But then to say, okay, well, what's done is done, and now the government is going to find a way to make this workable. No, because none of them are talking to each other. The U.S. cannot go into Venezuela, put foots on the ground without suffering casualties. I don't know a ton about Venezuela, but my feeling is that the Venezuelans are a lot more supportive of Maduro than our press gives him credit for. So like he replaced Chavez. Maybe he stole the election in 2024, but it's just the same thing with Iran. Like just because, okay, he stole the election or he did this doesn't mean that the majority of the population or a huge number of the population don't support him.
Or at least don't support him vis-a-vis a U.S. invasion.
Right. It's the same thing with Iran. Like, don't confuse them complaining about the economy with not supporting Iran against any sort of invader. And it's the same thing here. Like, I don't think that, that the U.S. can enter Venezuela. There are plenty of people that will fight. Again, they bought people off, but you can't buy off the whole country.
Not forever, at any rate. Well, I think that you're right. It's going to all circle back to the Epstein files, and and convicted felon. Trump is juggling all these different things. And I don't know what he expected out of Venezuela. I don't know what's going to come down the pike. Maybe there is some backup plan, but from everything, which is really not much, that I've read about the vice president, she's not going to take any sort of different policy. So unless she's worried about being snatched by the U.S. as well, it's like, okay, now I'm here and nothing else has changed. And I think we will look at this as like, why did we even do this? That's the best case scenario. It is forgotten in a week. I mean, we did the same thing in Panama, right? We've done this many, many times, and it only is in the news when it turns bad. So this will be forgotten in a week, unless we start seeing pictures of hundreds of dead Venezuelans in a civil war, unless we send troops back in there to rescue someone that got forgotten, God knows what. Then that's bad news. And I think we'll be back to the Epstein files. We'll be back to the economy. We'll be back to the stuff that's been sort of bubbling along all this time.
Yeah, I think the big risk here is that China is the number one importer of Venezuelan oil. And in fact, just this month ago, they brought online a large drilling platform that's in Lake, I forget what it is. So from China's perspective right now, because again, I think the U.S. made a promise, like, okay, we're taking him out, but we're not going to get in the way of any of your oil stuff with Venezuela, because that would be a red line. So now they have to guarantee that. And so if anything happens there, the Chinese can be like, hey, you have to help us out. And if they don't help them out, or even if they do help them out, this has now given China a pretext to, okay, well, I can go get Taiwan. You're basically back to the times where might makes right. And so will they take Taiwan now? I mean, really, Trump has given them the right. And now Congress is in the position of, it's just, I mean, it's so bad, but I feel it's been so bad for so long. I don't even know what to say about it anymore.
Well, that's probably a good note on which to end, and we'll circle back in a couple of days, and we'll see. Oh, but the note is China. Like, this is not a vacuum.
Right.
So the world's not a vacuum, and the days of the big fleet and the big stick and this and that. China has weapons we can only dream of, and hypersonic missiles and so forth that we can only dream of. Forget the nuclear stuff, chips and cyber warfare and all these things that at best we're on par with. More likely we're playing catch up, if even playing catch up. So the idea that we can just tell the Chinese to stay out of Ecuador, well, if they want access to Ecuador's oil, they're going to push back very, very hard. They just haven't yet, and maybe they will never have to.
Yeah, I mean, that's another piece of evidence for what I think has happened is that people I follow that are really into this stuff, they said there's a very advanced Chinese SAM system in Venezuela that was not bombed, that was untouched. So they're like, okay, well, if the U.S. is really invading, this would be the first prime target because this is the most capable of shooting down anything, and they left it alone. So why would they leave it alone unless they already had, China already knew what was going on? And so, yeah, I think with all of South America, it's going to be this quid pro quo, whatever it is, that, Trump is like, okay, we're going to take Venezuela, and, what's China can take?
Cambodia and Vietnam. And by the way, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand are not these very calm places. Not so much Vietnam, but certainly Cambodia and Thailand are shooting at each other. Minor war, and Pakistan and India and Bangladesh and China, and there's just a lot of tension in the world, and stuff like this doesn't really help at all diffuse it.
I agree. Trump is like, hey, it's free for all. All right, Craig, well, thanks for coming on the Free Speech Cage.
Thanks, Maxie, and we'll see you again soon.